Every man has his heroes, and every life is made up of stories. Heroic Stories is a series from heroicmen.org to find out why some men choose the harder path in life, even when it means losing everything, how they survived, and who they are today. These men seem heroic to us, even if they don't call themselves that. They seem to have an extra strength in their system, extra grit to battle doubt and find purpose. All of these men are seeking divine friendship with God, and they all believe in building up faith, building up men, and building up our future. Sponsored by CatholicSpeakers.com and hosted by Dominic from Heroic Men, get the mindsets, the scars, and the playbooks that these men have earned the hard way. Heroism isn't born, it's made, and these are their stories. Hi men, welcome back to Heroic Stories. I'm Dominic from Team Heroic Men, joined today by Curt Tomasevicz, an Olympian gold medalist. Good to have you with us, Curt.
Great to be here. Great to chat.
I've got a little question I want to throw at you later on, where you talk about having a gold medal meant less to you than a bronze medal, and that sounds like a reflection on men and success and how stuff changes as you actually win it. So I want to come back and ask you about that first. A story of heroism that absolutely lights you up, and could be from a movie, real life, something you've experienced or heard. What's a story that you love talking about?
Actually, a very personal story to me, a story of heroism, is when actually I played football at the University of Nebraska. I was a walk-on, not a lot of playing time, but again, I was part of the team. I got a request the night before one of our home games from a friend trying to get a couple tickets. And I wasn't, like I said, playing a lot, so I didn't have tickets at my disposal very easily. But it turns out that these tickets were for a 12-year-old boy and his mother. This 12-year-old boy, his name's Jordan, was suffering from a brain tumor at the time. And he had good days and bad days. That Friday happened to be a good day, so they were hoping this Saturday would be another good opportunity for him to get to a game. So I called our head coach, Frank Solich, at the time, and we arranged him to get some tickets. And afterwards, I got the chance to meet Jordan and his mom and his twin sister and his family. And the courage that Jordan showed every day, that to me is much more heroic than any kind of sporting event or anything like that. Again, 12 years old, he knew he was going to die. He did pass away about a year later, and him facing that every day with the courage to, again, be aware of what his mother was going through, his twin sister, like he was more concerned about them than himself. And I just can't even comprehend what that truly is like to be that kind of hero.
Can you say a bit more? What is it that you saw about him? And was it his attitude or just the way that he talked about things, the way he answered your questions, or his outlook? Like, what is it about that so moved you?
His selflessness and his faith. I think though the combination of those two things, again, I don't know, he was losing his vision. He had trouble with balance, where the tumor was located, affected those sorts of things. But he never complained. He went through treatments, did everything he could to try to get better. But again, throughout all of that, he was worried about his mom's schedule. How many days was his sister going to have to miss from school because of what he was going through? Those sorts of selfless acts and just aware of what other people are experiencing. Again, that is incredibly touching. And now this is almost 20 years ago, and I still look at him as probably my biggest hero.
It's amazing. So, if you don't mind my asking, why that story? For somebody like yourself, you have met, I can imagine, thousands of top-performing people with incredible backstories and events in their lives and so on, and yet this is the one that has mattered to you over the last 20 years. What does that say about you such that that story is one that really stands out?
I think part of it was where I was at in life, too. I was an undergrad, very impressionable, year old, 18, 19, 20 years old at the time, trying to find my way in life, and at the same time thinking I've got a lot of stuff figured out, which I didn't. And yeah, this 12-year-old kid comes into my life and, just smacks me in the face with what truth is, and how to really be a man, and how to be a man of faith and how to handle incredibly hard situations. I still, again, 20 years later, I can't imagine what he was going through and how I would handle it at his age. It just blows me away.
Amazing. Can I ask about your relationship to the faith and your journey as a Catholic? Was that something you were taking less seriously, more seriously at the time? And then he impacted you?
Yeah, very much so. Growing up, yeah, I was very what I would call routine devout Catholic. Went to church every weekend with my family. It was always a priority, but until I really got on my own in college, did I, you know, live that every week, every day like I was supposed to? And the answer was no. It really took me that experience on my own, get away from mom and dad a little bit and out of the sheltered umbrella to ask the questions of why am I doing this? What should I be doing? How does this really apply to real life and not just go through the motions on Sunday? And yeah, Jordan showed me what it's like to really have faith in the afterlife and faith in what's going to happen. And then again, lead that type of life in practice on earth.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it sounds like that's a good segue to our next question, which is what's one of the most difficult decisions that you've ever had to make? And how did you do it? How did you get through it?
Uh, Another very good question, of course. I think one of the biggest challenges that every athlete faces and every person faces too is transition. And athletes, when they get done competing, especially if they've had a multiple year career as a very, very focused athlete, as an Olympic athlete, we know what dates our Olympics are going to be. And for 4 years or even longer, we are focused on that date. That date comes and goes and life goes on. The athlete is looking around like, well, what happens next? I'm not that athlete anymore. Sometimes the writing is on the wall that I need to retire or my body's telling me I have to stop. Sometimes it's not. And so you're on the fence of, should I continue? Should I go one more year? But it's 4 more years to the next Olympics. And that makes it really tough for a lot of athletes. You hear stories all the time of athletes retiring and coming back. And I can relate to that. I understand that. So 2014, my knees and back were saying you have to be done. But yeah, psychologically, I wasn't sure where I fit, where I belonged. And so, yeah, I went through that. I don't like to use the word depression because I wasn't, going into a dark place, but I was definitely trying to figure out where I fit. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate to have a priest friend. We talked a lot about what I should do next, where I should fit. And so I came back home, and at 33 years old, I moved back in with mom and dad for a short time, trying to get someplace comfortable and then try to figure things out from the base. And I think his advice and, really just looking at what's the most important thing first. That's family, that's faith. And, that's where, you need to start when making big decisions. So he helped me kind of put those pieces in place. And then when I kind of felt more comfortable with the idea of moving on, then some other opportunities came to me and things started to work out a lot easier.
For a lot of us, you travel around a lot. You talk to a lot of uh, various ages, young men, I assume, and so on. What you just described right there is reaching the peak of one career and then having to step away from it and then have to kind of renegotiate your relationship to everything and then start again. How did you do that?
Yeah, fortunately, through bobsled, I've had the opportunity to speak to thousands of different types of audiences. Yeah, from grade school kids all the way through adults and men's groups. And, when I can tie in my faith to my story and my message, it seems to make a lot more sense. I understand that very few people can relate to actually bobsledding, but almost everybody, actually, I will say everybody can relate to having to overcome some type of fear and transition and change. And that's usually what my message is we can relate it to bobsled. You're standing at the top of a track and you look over the cliff and there is so much unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. And there's a lot of scary things that can happen along the way. A bobsled track usually has 16 curves or so and about a mile of going 80 miles an hour. And it's on the edge of out of control. And that is relatable to a lot of people's lives, right? I'm on the edge of out of control. I'm trying to make decisions and they have to be quick and I don't know what's going to happen. Once I make a decision, it's in the past. I can't change it. All that really is relatable to life.
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
so that's usually what I try to talk about and how that works, again, in my bobsled career. And then again, in a metaphorical way of trying to relate it to everybody else's life too.
Yeah, yeah. What are a couple of lessons that come to mind as you look back on the experience of what you accomplished and what you were doing in bobsledding? Is like what you were just doing right there. I want to keep pulling on that thread for a second. Are there some other um, handy ways of just looking at life, because you've now gone on to a completely different career path. You now do different things. Remind us what it is again. It has to do with biology and engineering, I think it was.
Yeah, I'm kind of two jobs. I am a assistant professor of practice at the University of Nebraska in biological systems engineering. Kind of focus on biomechanics and human movement. So that's where I tie in engineering with athletics.
Okay.
And then I'm also the director of sport performance for USA Bobsled and Skeleton as well.
Amazing.
That's kind of the path my life took and put me in these roles now.
So you're in a completely different space now. So as you look back at the skills of what bobsledding is and what you accomplished as an Olympian, what are a couple of like, what do you call them? Not slogans, they're like axioms or just practices that you think of that help you stay oriented as you go about doing anything in life.
Yeah, and I think, again, experience has taught me a lot of lessons, and no matter what that experience was in, whether it was college football or studying engineering or through bobsled. And I think two quick ones maybe that come to mind are be able to set goals and have something you're striving for, but at the same time be flexible, knowing that your goals can change. And that's kind of the second one is kind of be willing to try something new. Those are two things that led me to be able to try out for the bobsled team. When I was in college, my goal was to play in the NFL. It's something I wanted to do. A handful of things happened and I didn't get that opportunity. But really quickly, when the opportunity of bobsled came into my life, I jumped at the chance, completely shifted my goals, still striving for something, still trying to be a better person, a better athlete, still working toward that, knowing that my idea of goals and where I was headed changed directions quite a bit. So the combination of those things, I guess I would say, were probably the leading causes and the motivation to getting me to try the sport and then continue to be successful in the sport.
I think I remember reading that your background or your town didn't really have a connection to bobsledding. So it's a very different track that you took. But what I'm sensing maybe underneath your journey is this pursuit of excellence. And then perhaps a relentless ability somehow to keep following it and to not quit or something, and then you take that to an Olympic degree, right? If that's true, how and why is that true? Maybe where does that come from? Such that you could put that into anything like, oh, I'm doing NFL, oh, bobsledding. Okay, let me go do that. And then obviously there's fantastic opportunity there, but there's an underlying grit that you've obviously earned, learned, acquired or something. Where does that come from?
I think one of I'll say the biggest attributes I had as a bobsled athlete was my background in growing up in small town Nebraska. And that absolutely sounds crazy because there's zero bobsledding in Nebraska. The land is incredibly flat. We have a lot of corn, a lot of cows, but even sledding in the big hills we have, sledding takes about 5 seconds to get down to the bottom of the hill. Never thought I was going to get into bobsled. When I threw the idea out to even my parents and, my close family friends, they first kind of raised an eyebrow, like, what are you talking about? Bobsledding is popular in Cool Runnings. And that's, the only thing we had to relate to it. But then at the same time, when my hometown of 690 people, when they kind of heard my story and they bought into it, they quickly had fundraisers for me. They, did everything they could to support my crazy dream. And them coming together for a purpose was incredibly inspiring, kept me motivated, and kept me funded to be able to do this. And without their backing me, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And without all the lessons I learned about hardworking farmers and teachers and parents that come from those communities that come together, that's what really drove me to loving to be a part of a team and then working hard to carry my weight as part of a team, knowing that there's other people relying on me. Those things, were instilled in me when I was incredibly young, growing up in that town. So Shelby, Nebraska really taught me and made me who I am too.
Amazing. Shout out to Shelby. So, it sounds like they believed in you. How did that feel? That sounds pretty amazing.
At first I saw it as pressure, when you got your hometown that you grew up with and, everybody's house and, everything that you're so familiar with. When they say, yeah, we're counting on you, we're rooting for you, at first it was pressure. And I did see it as a positive thing, of course, but I didn't want to let them down either. And so maybe that was more motivation to continue to work hard and again, so I didn't let them down. But eventually I saw it as a positive support fully. And no matter what I did, I was making them proud. I was doing everything that they expected me to do, which was work hard, do my best, be a good person throughout all of it. So Olympics or not, medal or not, they were going to be proud of me. So that's what I really took with me.
Amazing. I'm curious what you think about this. I've got a working theory that, like, when you're in competition with the couch, when a man is in competition with the couch versus everything else that he could achieve with his life, it can be pretty impossible to get up and get going unless there's somebody counting on you or somebody needing you. To just sit there and try to invent a reason or a meaning to go and do something, we just don't do it. And as you're speaking to young men and men perhaps around the country, because that's who our audience is, men who are seeking heroism, seeking to do more or be more with their lives, what goes through your mind with a line of thinking like that? If you've got nothing, but you might be called for more, what would be the first thing that goes through your mind to advise them or encourage them?
Earlier, I mentioned being adaptable and flexible in what your goals are. Again, I firmly believe that always striving for something, having a goal is really important. So you're not just aimlessly kind of wandering through things. And so that being motivated to do something, whether it's be ambitious to go get the mail or be ambitious to try out for the U.S. bobsled team or, something in between, whatever it is, have a purpose and be driven to do it the best you can. And yeah, for some people, that means doing it as part of a group and, being held accountable as well as holding other people accountable. I think that was a great motivator for me. My training groups were mostly my bobsled teammates, but I was fortunate to train at the Olympic Training Center, Colorado Springs, where there were fencers and marathon runners and wrestlers and weightlifters, people from all different sports. And so we could hold each other accountable for showing up on time, even though we weren't necessarily in competition with each other, but we made each other better in that way. And so I didn't want to let them down by not showing up one day. Even again, they weren't necessarily my teammates or somebody I was competing with or against. But those sorts of things put me in a position to be successful. And so those small things of putting forth a little bit of effort to make sure that somebody is holding you accountable to being there, doing all those things, that kept me on track. And, it prevented me from sitting around and making excuses and not carrying my weight.
It does seem to be good advice and recurring advice to surround yourself with people, especially people who are doing the kind of thing that maybe interests you. There's sort of a transfer of interest or motivation that can then move you. So talking about being inspired by people, who are your heroes, either from history or from real life, people you've met, people who inspire you? Who are they?
Yeah, I've got a list.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say my sports heroes growing up, I loved Cubs baseball. I always said Mark Grace, Greg Maddux. They were two of my sports heroes growing up. And I always looked at them as, again, maybe not the most talented, naturally talented, but hard workers. I think Greg Maddux was always a person of that where, a pitcher wasn't going to blow you away with a 90 mile or, high upper 80s fastball, which is by today's standards pretty slow. But he was going to outwork you, outsmart you, and, take care of the details to be as perfect as he could be. So from a sports aspect, I guess, he's one of my favorite athletes. I'll say another hero that I had was my English teacher in high school. Just a quick example of why was I remember just before we were getting ready to graduate. So my senior year, we've got senioritis, can't wait to get out of here, move on to bigger, better things kind of thing. And I remember she gave us a book report or, some kind of lengthy assignment or project a month or so before we graduated. And you can imagine all the seniors are rolling their eyes, why do we really have to do this? And I kind of saw myself as a leader of our, again, very small class. I had 25 kids in my graduating class. I respectfully, kind of asked, what's the purpose of this? It's not going to affect our GPA at this point. Why? And she kind of not fired back, but, responded with, that's exactly why you need to do this. Or the consequence may not be heavy. It's not going to affect your grades that much. You're going to graduate or you're not at this point. All those sorts of things are kind of set. But she wanted to know who was still going to do the right thing, who was still going to put forth the effort, do it with integrity, do all those tiny things that, you can apply to other things in life. Like, if somebody isn't watching you, are you still doing the right thing? If the consequence isn't heavy, do you still put forth the same effort? All those sorts of things. I look back and English wasn't my best subject, but she became my favorite teacher pretty quickly after I realized that she cared so much about teaching us the right thing and not just, again, I don't even remember what book it was about, but that's not the point. But it was definitely about putting
Sounds
forth
like a
the effort
lesson
and doing
about honor that really hit home for you.
Yep. And I'm never going to forget that almost 30 years ago.
Amazing. Anybody else? Who else comes to mind?
Again, those
Those are the big
teachers,
ones.
coaches that I had in high school. I remember one of our coaches in junior high. We were getting ready to junior high football in a small town like that. We practiced twice a week and we had a game on Sunday. And we only had like 4, maybe 6 games in the year. So my first time playing tackle football. This is awesome, right? I get to look forward, and I only have 3 times a week that I actually got to put on the helmet, shoulder pads, and play. And I remember we canceled practice one day because our coach, who was, again, a small town, very involved with the farming community, he wanted all the players to help with a bigger project. And we basically moved hay bales out of a barn so that another farmer could park a combine, a grain combine, into the barn. And again, we didn't really understand why, but the full story was that there was another farmer whose daughter was very sick. This farmer was, battling insurance companies and always busy taking her to the hospital and taking care of her. And I don't remember all the details of her situation. But the indirect way that we were just trying to help the community and help people come together to support this farmer and his daughter. Again, I don't remember, obviously, if we won or lost that football game that weekend, and none of that mattered. But again, it's the lesson of this coach taught me sports are when people come together, true. But when a bigger community comes together for a purpose, that's a powerful thing. And that's what I took away from that coach too. Definitely a hero of mine. So that coach, that teacher, them, in addition to my childhood sports heroes, that's really who influenced me the most growing up, for sure.
Amazing. I'm sensing there's 3 themes that keep emerging from your stories. One is just the grit to outwork anybody, which I personally love. Then there's that sense of honor. Above and beyond the actual game you're playing, there's a deeper game that we're involved in and called to. Well, and the third one is the pursuit of excellence. Do those sound accurate? Those seem like those motivate you across your stories.
Yeah, I think so. You're exactly right. I think honor goes with everything you do, whether it's sports or academics or your work or your family life. Again, doing the right thing when consequences may be small or somebody else isn't watching. Like we talked about, that honor with integrity has always been very important to me, more so than winning or losing, and controlling what you can in the form of outworking somebody if it is a competition. Yeah, I never want to say, I wish I would have worked just a little bit harder. It's crossing every T, dotting every I with every detail is something I've taken pride in.
Amazing. So I'm curious to ask you about this comment that you made. I found it online. It was on, what was it, National Catholic Register. You said something interesting about the productivity standpoint of winning a bronze matters more to you, or made more sense to you than actually earning the gold. Could you recap that for our listeners? And then what is the life lesson that you're taking from that you continue to apply?
Yeah, I think it's definitely perspective, and and it goes into the situation itself, because yes, the gold medal, I mean, that was, the pinnacle of most sporting careers, and standing on the podium and, seeing the U.S. flag being raised here in the national anthem, all that is really kind of hard to compare to any other experience, really. But we did win the gold medal in 2010, and my team was one of the favorites to win that gold medal. We had a huge lead going into the last heat, and we ended up winning the race by quite a bit by bobsled standards. It was less than half a second, but that was a significant amount.
Amazing.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great competition. 4 years later, the bronze medal competition, or the race itself, was much closer. The gold medal was, I won't say was a little bit in doubt, but the Russians at the time did win the gold medal. Latvia was in a solid second place. I think going to the last heat of the race, there were about 6 sleds within about 0.2 of a second for the bronze medal. And we were one of them, obviously. And then the second Russian team was another one. And so competing in Russia against Russia, when, we were separated by just a couple hundredths of seconds, that intense competition, knowing that everything you did was going to matter. And again, we were the visitors in a sense too, on foreign soil, literally. And My teammates and I, part of my favorite story is, we realized how quiet it was when we were getting ready to compete. Wasn't many Americans in the crowd cheering for us. Mostly, thousands of Russians all hopped up on vodka, going crazy for their team. But our support was minimal. And my teammates and I talked about it later that all the support was up into that moment. Metaphorically, my hometown, my youth coaches, my college coaches, everybody that helped me get to that moment, their support has been awesome. But right here, right now, it is up to the four of us. And so we kind of shared that, little confident wink, like this is our time. We're going to get this. And that really came together and made that bronze medal at the time, incredibly special, that we pulled it off, and it was such a tight race. We did it better than everybody else of that group. Now, yeah, it did turn out 5 years later that the Russian team that won the race was disqualified. So that bronze medal was actually promoted to a silver medal.
Oh, okay.
Which, again, it's the competition itself, it doesn't change. My memories, all that experience has been the exact same. So that's what my comment was referring to, is that intense competition for that bronze medal was probably more special than running away with the competition for the gold medal.
So our last question for this show is, in the work that you now do, and as you travel around the country and you speak to people and you're looking at doing an insane amount of good and the rest of the time that you have, who are people that you dream to be a hero for, that you want to put heroic effort towards serving? And again, I'll be really annoying because you can't pick the God card or your family card because those are givens. So who are you here for?
Your question is interesting because I don't think it's my job to say I'm a hero for anybody or try to even take any kind of heroic form. The best I can do is be the most positive influence for anybody. A lot of my audience and messaging and that sort of thing is, well, it is a wide audience. I mentioned speaking to young kids, speaking to adults and corporate events or men's groups, faith-based or not. Again, I'm always trying to, I guess, use the bobsled analogy of, again, so much is unknown in your life as you're going down a crazy, windy track on the edge of out of control, fish tailing on ice, all those things that, may seem very scary. In my experience, if you take care of everything that you can, all the details, all the big things, then life usually has a way of working out and being in your favor as much as possible. So those audiences they change a lot. I also oversee a lot of athletes and a lot of students in my two jobs that I have. And so can I directly talk to them about my faith? Not always, but I hope my faith kind of comes out in my actions and what I do, not just what I say, to help them be the best athlete or student that they can be too.
Thanks for joining us. If this story connected with you, send it to someone. And if you want to chat with us about anything that we've said, send us a message at heroicmen.org/stories. Our partner at CatholicSpeakers.com has built the easiest way to book powerful Catholic speakers for your men's event. They are the #1 resource worldwide for event organizers and Catholic speakers. Book easily, confidently, and ask for several grants to support ministry to men. Visit heroicmen.org/speakers today. Come and share your journey in the Heroic Brotherhood, our online community for Catholic men like you. Get the app with the best Catholic media for men, including Heroic Men's original series, Be a Man. It's all free because an alliance of donors already paid it forward for you. Stand with us. Let's build the future of Catholic men. Will you pay it forward? $5 a month pays it forward for 5 men. Visit Heroic Men to stand with us. Because men like us, we leave no man behind. Visit heroicmen.org today.